shiresociety.com.
It's going to be a big time on the lake tomorrow. Alrighty, bye-bye.
Abolish the Federal Reserve, yes or no?
Thanks, guys. That no.
Government officials, even wicked ones, have certain human rights. We don't spend a lot of time harping on this issue in the liberty movement because those rights are generally respected. It's the little people who tend to need the most protecting. The people outside government. But what happens when the government gets thrown out of power? What happens to the human rights of its ministers? Its former ministers. Globally, historically, largely they do pretty well. Ex-KGB operative Vladimir Putin might be the best example. I can't think of a single example where ex-Soviet officials were charged with any kind of war crime or subjected to much abuse. Some people, however, believe the American situation is closer to this one. Unlike the Soviet 1990 era revolutions, which mostly did more good than harm once they took power, I worry that a new American government under a new American system could be even worse than what we have now. That's what happened in 1789 France, 1917 Russia, 1989 Serbia, 1960 Cuba. Oh, and there, like the French Revolution, I believe there are very serious abuses against former government officials. What does this have to do with us? Free staters?
Shut it off. You go and get arrested.
Where's the statute?
It's right on the wall.
Oh. Can you show me?
I said.
Can you show me where it is on the
You're
wall?
under arrest.
No, sir.
Okay.
I just want to see where the law is.
You're under arrest.
No.
Well, it means we need to do the kind of thing that Derrick Horton has done. Also known as Derrick J. This young man used his bully pulpit to raise concerns about the treatment of a former government official. I don't remember the victim's name, but there was a jail guard at the Cheshire County Jail who was recently arrested for having marijuana. Derrick was quick to speak up in defense of his human rights, even though he had been one of Derrick's jailers. That's Free State activity at its best, looking out for the human rights of our enemies. If we step forward to defend everyone's human rights, especially our enemies, then we probably won't have very many enemies for very long. Government officials should come to believe accurately that the more power we obtain, the more safety they have. At least from obvious abuses. They might not all be safe from prosecution of some kind, but the limited budgets that Free Staters would impose on the government make it unlikely there would be widespread prosecutions of our former tormentors.
All I am saying is give peace a chance.
You guys!
A South African-style Truth and Reconciliation Committee seems more likely. That's how the Mandela government, I believe, went about trying to close the chapter on apartheid. Closing the chapter on authoritarianism will require a similar greatness of us and a similar level of restraint. A similar readiness to stand up for the rights of our enemies.
The old world is collapsing, and it's going to take its slave driver governments with it. But what will rise up in their place? In New Hampshire, the Shire Society has a plan, a thriving web forum, and a history of action.
It didn't take long to come up with a plan.
You can sign up right now at
shiresociety.com.